Small Spaces by Katherine Arden, Chapter 21. When Coco woke up, it was morning. Ollie glanced down at the space beneath them first. The scarecrows were still there, but the life was gone from them. They were only a mass of straw and dolls. Ollie glanced at her watch. The countdown had resumed. 6 hours, 13 minutes, 21 seconds. Maze. That's a new word. Maze. Beth Webster had said the maze was the way out. Phil, as a scarecrow, said something about the maze. But the smiling man is also in the middle of the maze. And the smiling man, when he smiled at them, that's when they became scarecrows. Okay. Maze sounds like the place to go, but there are dangers. All right. Brian sat up, groaning. Are they gone? He asked. No, said Ollie. They're down there. They all peered over the edge and shuddered. How are we supposed to get down? Coco asked. For, of course, the ladder was broken. We could jump down, said Brian unenthusiastically. Maybe the scarecrows would break our fall. Or they wouldn't, and we'd break our ankles, said Coco. We can't just sit up here forever, said Ollie. Fine, said Brian shortly. You jump first. Hush. Hear that? Coco said. Ollie and Brian fell silent. Rub, creak. It sounded like slow feet overhead. They all froze. Then suddenly Ollie laughed. She stood up. No scarecrows this time, she said. A tree branch rubbing the roof. And that means a tree, which means a way down. The roof tiles are all rotten. She began scraping at the roof from the inside. Wormy wood rained down on her. Come on, help me. Together they made a hole big enough to boost Coco's head through. A tree branch, cried Coco. Ollie, you were right. Here. She grabbed something they couldn't see and struggled out, kicking. It's fine, said Coco, muffled overhead. You just have to climb. Carefully. How is she the clumsiest person ever on the ground, yet a squirrel when she's climbing? Muttered Ollie. Brian grinned. You're kind of grumpy most of the time, but when things get bad, you're the bravest. People can surprise you, Ollie Pop. Without another word, he turned away and began making the hole in the roof bigger. Ollie found herself smiling. Yeah, sometimes even hockey stars read books, she said. Sometimes, said Brian, and smiled back. You next. Ollie hoisted her backpack and let him push her out of the hole in the roof. She found herself high above the world, looking out at the huge, rustling field of corn. There seemed to be a dark lump in the center of the field, but she couldn't tell what it was. Ollie waited to be scared sick of the height, but she wasn't. Coco had used the branch rubbing the barn roof like a bridge. Now she was watching anxiously from the fork of the big old oak tree. Come on, Ollie, she called. Behind her, Brian said, Come on, Ollie, it's not that high. And Olivia Adler, without hesitation, crawled across the branch and began climbing down the tree. In a few minutes, they were all on the ground, flushed with success. That's kind of a big deal for Ollie because she's really scared of heights. The corn stalks hissed all together. They were taller than Brian's head. Scarecrows stood in the corn. The trio caught glimpses of bright shirts and checked shirts. None of them really wanted to go into the field. Well, said Ollie, either we wait for the scarecrows to come back tonight and every night until they get us or we starve, or we go into the corn. We can't leave without the others, said Brian. Once you leave Narnia, you can't get back in the same way. Ollie nodded. If anyone is going to save them, it has to be us. She raised her watch. Maze, it said. The answer has to be in there. Fine, said Coco, looking unhappily at the corn. Fine. They were like swimmers about to jump into icy water, and no one wanted to go first. Let's go, said Ollie. She reached out her hands. Brian and Coco took them. The three stepped into the corn. The path was narrow, and they switched to single file. Ollie went first, then Coco, then Brian. Their feet squelched in the mud. Such big stalks. The corn looked like it could swallow the gray sky, much less three wandering kids. They were walking down a row. Ollie could barely hear her own footsteps. couldn't hear Brian's and Coco's. The corn rustled too loudly, dead stalks rubbing together. The row ended. Ollie looked up at a huge wall of corn. They could turn left or right. Okay, said Ollie, it's definitely a corn maze. We have to get to the center. Any ideas? Ollie had loved corn mazes when she was small. Left, then right, squealing in fake terror, mud flying as she ran, and then finally figuring it out, getting to the center, laughing. Her father picking her up, saying, "Way to go, Ollie Pop! No maze can stop you!" But this was different. This was cold and huge and scary. "Guys," said Ollie, turning. Coco and Brian were gone. The winds whispered in the corn stalks. "Guys?" Silence. Ollie began to backtrack. "Coco?" she called. "Brian?" Ollie could see only one set of footsteps, only hers, the print of her rain boots. Where had they gone? For that matter, where was the way they'd come in? For now, another wall of corn rose right in front of her, and she couldn't see the house or the barn. How was that possible? They'd walked straight in, not turning. But now there were walls on two sides, and Coco and Brian weren't there. Ollie felt close to panic. She spun, headed the other direction, deeper into the corn. Shh, went the stalks all around. Ollie thought she saw a dark shape up ahead. She ran, calling, "Brian!" But it was only a scarecrow with a yellow backpack, staked upright, looking out over the field with sightless eyes. No other sound but the hissing corn and the whine of Ollie's own breathing. What if something had taken the others, just sneaked up through the corn and dragged them away? Something worse than the scarecrows. The smiling man? Maybe he was watching her even now. "Coco?" Ollie called again. "Brian?" Someone yelled, "Ollie! Ollie!" Ollie spun. "Coco?" "Ollie!" the voice called again. Ollie began to run, calling her friends' names. She came to the place where the path split, left or right. Rustling in the corn. Was that something coming up behind her? Ollie chose a direction at random, left, and took off running. Her backpack thumped against her back. "Brian! Coco!" The corn rattled. The sky blurred. Ollie passed a scarecrow, then another. Furiously, she kicked the last one down so that it lay still in the mud, looking up at the sky with its empty, smiling face. Ollie was in a panic by then, alone, sobbing for air, stuck in a maze. She would never get out. And all around her were the scarecrows with their snatching rake hands, just waiting for the night to grab her and put her on a stake and make her a scarecrow forever. Then Ollie put her foot in a hole, tripped, and came down hard. She could taste the salt of her tears. She lay a moment in the icy mud, crying. She was lost in a monster's stupid corn maze, and she was all alone. She wasn't going to get out, not before dark. What would her dad do when she never came back? There was a sound coming from underneath her, a sound different from the sound of the wind in the corn. It took Ollie a moment to understand. One arm was stuck beneath her, the arm that wore her mother's watch. The watch was beeping, softly and steadily, like a heartbeat, like something calm. "Don't panic," Ollie's mom had always told her. "That's the first rule of survival. Never panic." Ollie took a deep breath. That was probably what the smiling man wanted, for her to wear herself out running and being scared. Ollie sat up, and then she stood. Her jeans were covered in cold, sticky mud. "I'm not scared," Ollie said. "I'm not. I'm going to find the center. I'm getting out of here. We all are." She looked at her watch. The text readout was gone. In its place was a digital compass. Compass. Oh, compass. That's north, south, east, west. "Mom?" Ollie whispered. "Mom, if you're here, please." No answer. Please what? Ollie thought, mad at herself. Please answer? Please drift out of the corn? A ghost? Please don't be dead? The watch buzzed softly against Ollie's wrist. The readout showed a compass needle, but instead of the normal north, south, east, west directions, there were only two. There was an I where north should be, There was an O where south should be. Ollie thought a minute and then she understood. In the maze or out. Maybe out was safer. No scarecrows. But in was finding Brian and Coco. In was maybe saving everyone. In was being brave. Like her mom had been brave. Always. Always. Her mom was the bravest person Ollie had ever met. Ollie could be brave. Her mom was helping her. She was. Ollie swung around until in lined up with the path. Show me, she whispered. Show me. I think she's talking to her mom. Like, okay, Mom, I'm listening. Show me. Do I go in the maze? Which direction? Where do I go? Help me be brave. Oh, I wonder if she's going to get in the maze. I wonder if is she going to find Brian Coco? Is the smiling man going to find her and smile at her and turn her into a scarecrow? Ah!